Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cypher Guide series. This time we have a Cypher guide for the new map Abyss, which in my opinion is not one of Cypher's best maps, but he has some really neat setups which I'm going to show you in this video. But without further ado, let's get into it. For first round buys on attack, I recommend the very default buy of a cage and a tripwire along with a ghost or a frenzy. My preference is a ghost, but it's up to you. And the reason for that is because one tripwire is really enough to watch flank, so you don't really need two on both sides. And then the cage is going to be really useful because you can block off certain angles when you're pushing up with your team. But on defense, I recommend a pretty unique buy of all of your utility and the classic, because there's so many angles that the enemies can be pushing from. So having multiple tripwires and multiple cages can help you stop enemies from pushing in different directions and can get you a lot of easy kills in the first round. Beginning with my first setup on B site, for the camera you want to do a jump throw until you get a cam something like this. This cam allows you to see when the enemies are beginning to push up onto B site and lets you see all of B site as well, which is really useful. For the first tripwire, you actually want to place your first trip around right here and your second tripwire right here for when they do the jump. And then you want to throw a cage on top of this first tripwire around here. So the way this actually works, when you notice the enemies are pushing up or about to do this jump right here, you activate this cage and you have two choices. You either peek with a phantom and kill anyone who's hitting your tripwires, but you can also wallbang them through this wall and kill anyone who hits your tripwires. For the second setup, this allows enemies to push in a little bit deeper on the site, but can catch them off guard and can rack you up a lot of easy kills when the enemies are pushing up and give you a numbers advantage. So for the camera, you actually want to place it a little bit deeper around here. So this cam allows you to see when the enemies are actually pushing up onto site at the moment and can allow you to see all of site itself, which is really useful for this setup. For the first tripwire, you want to place a trip right here, as well as your second trip right here. And then the way you're actually going to play this, you want to go back up top to where you place the camera and throw a cage down, so somewhere around here. You're going to be playing on this angle, and when you notice the enemies are pushing up or trying to make more space, you activate this cage right here and kill anyone who hits your trips. As for my third setup on B site, you want to begin by placing a tripwire right here. This allows you to catch anyone who's trying to cross between the crates and is only breakable from this side when you're crossing here, which is really useful. For the second tripwire, you want to place a trip on this pipe like this. And while this may not seem too useful initially, when people clear angles here, they're very likely to run into this trip. So then you want to throw a cage around here, and you're going to be playing this in a very similar way to the first setup. But when the wall actually falls, you're going to have a different camera. You want to place a cam here as soon as the wall falls. And when you notice the enemies are pushing up, it is actually a really hard camera to spot initially. So it's really useful for your setup. So the way this actually works, when you notice the enemies are beginning to push up or getting close to your setup, you activate this cage right here, and you either shoot them by peeking with a phantom, or you wallbang them through this wall when they hit your trips. As for my final setup on B site, you want to begin by jumping up on these crates right here and doing the same cam I showed from the first setup, being this one right here. This cam allows you to see when the enemies are pushing up, which is exactly what you want for this setup. As for the first tripwire, you want to place a trip in front of this book right here like this. And then you want to throw your second tripwire like this. Then you want to throw a cage on top of this trip right here. And then a second cage on top of this crate right here, around here. So the way this actually works, you're going to be playing back here. And when you notice the enemies are beginning to push up or trying to push up B danger, whichever one you notice them pushing up first, you activate the cage. Let's say you know they're pushing up danger, you kill this person right here doing the jump. And if you notice they're pushing up site itself first up the ramp, you kill anyone who hits your trip and protect the site. On A site, Cypher actually has a lot of really strong cameras, so I'm going to show you one right now. So you want to go up to A tower, and then you want to do a jump throw over here until you get a cam something like this. This cam allows you to see all of the site itself as well as when they're pushing out of A main, which is super useful. Then for your first trip, you're going to want to place one right here on this crate, as well as the second one right here. And then you're going to want to jump up top here and then throw a cage around here. And if you don't want them to know where you're shooting from, you can also throw a cage around there as well. But you're going to be playing this right here. And when you notice the enemies are beginning to push up out of main, you activate this cage. And if you place the other one, you do that too. And kill anyone who hits your trips. And the nice thing about this setup is since you're playing backside, if you want to back up and play retake with your team after like a pick or something like that, you can just back up here and then play retake. For my second setup on A site, it actually uses a different camera. So you want to go over here, back in tower, and then do a jump throw until you get a cam something like this. This cam is a little bit harder to see for the enemies, but it gives you a little bit less info, but it's actually perfect for what you're going to be doing with this setup. So you want to actually place a tripwire right here for when the enemies push out, and if they decide to go right, they'll run into it. And then for your second trip, you're going to want to place one on this barrel right here, like that. Then you're going to want to go up top in tower and throw a cage around here. And then you're going to play this in tower. When you notice the enemies are beginning to push up, you pop this cage right here and kill anyone who hits either of your trips. My last setup on A site, for the camera, you're going to want to jump up top here and then go on top of this crate and then do a jump throw around here. You can see a little bit into A main with this camera, but more specifically, you can see all of site itself, which is really great. For the first tripwire, you're going to want to place a trip around right here, which is a little curved. And then for the second trip, you want to place one right here for when the enemies decide to push up deep. Then you're going to want to throw a cage on top of both of the tripwires, and you're going to play this around the middle of backside. So this setup actually gives enemies a lot of space, but if the enemies are playing it right, they'll try to get some space backside so that they won't get peeked when they're planting or anything like that, which is when you're going to shine. When you notice the enemies are pushing up on your camera from either side, you pop the cage, kill anyone who hits your trip, pop this cage, kill anyone who hits your trip, and you get some easy picks, and you're prepared for post plant with numbers. While I normally wouldn't recommend watching mid as Cypher on most maps, this map has an extremely strong mid, so it could be good to know some tripwires here as well. So you're going to want to place a tripwire in front of the barrier right here, since there's not really a way for the enemies to get past this unless they have like a jet updraft or an omen TP or anything like that. But for the second trip, they can also jump across here, so you're going to want to place a tripwire right here. So basically the only way the enemies can get past is either with some type of utility, or they break the door, which will alert you anyway, so you'll know whenever they're passing through mid at any moment in the round. When it comes to attacking B site, the flank trip you're going to want to place is right here, since it watches any flank through spawn. But if you're worried about a flank through mid bend, you would have to place a second tripwire here as well, being around here or something similar to that. But when you're actually pushing up onto site, I recommend just camming this right away, since it allows you to get early info on if anyone's peeking tower or if anyone's peeking up here on this crate, or if there's any weird angle the enemies are peeking from. But when it actually comes to pushing up, I recommend throwing a cage in B tower, since it blocks off one entire angle and makes clearing the site so much easier for you and your team. But if you still have your second tripwire, you can place a post plant tripwire right here and it blocks off one entire angle, and you're ready for your post plant. When it comes to attacking A site, there's only one flank trip you're gonna need, and it's gonna be around here. This covers all of flank, and the enemies can't really get past it without any kind of utility. When it comes to actually pushing up though, I would recommend camming around here, since it gives you early info on if anyone's peeking A tower, or if anyone's backside, or holding a close angle here, or having any kind of weird angle. When it comes to pushing up though, I would recommend throwing a cage around here. This allows you to block off one entire angle, and it makes clearing sight so much easier. But while this cage is up, I would recommend putting another tripwire around here, so that when you play back main for post plant, can get yourself an easy pick on post plant. This is just a little bonus funny tripwire, but if you want to get a funny easy kill and make the enemies fall off of the cliff, you can place a tripwire around right here-ish. And it's pretty undodgeable from the enemy's POV, and if they don't notice it, they'll just jump off the cliff, something like this, and it'll give you a really funny kill and make your entire team laugh. Thank you guys for watching this Cypher guide on the new map Abyss. I hope you guys learned something new or saw a new setup that you haven't seen before. I tried to find some unique setups for this map, but there's not too many Cypher setups on this map. But I plan on going into more depth and maybe making an updated version of this in the future. So I hope you guys enjoyed. But for right now, see ya.